Welcome back to the strategy session, Mapping the Business You Actually Want series. In this series, we are breaking down how we approach strategic mapping here at Elevate, the framework that we use to move from scattered ideas to aligned actions, because the growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens when vision meets structure. Whether you're planning your next quarter or the next 5 years, this series is here to help you think bigger, lead better, and execute smarter. Last episode, we talked about why you need a strategic plan, and today we're zooming out even further and talking about the vision.
Yes, I'm really excited about this one. We see it often where business owners say they want growth, but they've actually never clearly defined what that growth looks like.
That's right. And growth can look different for different people based on the business that you have. It could be your revenue, it could be your team size, it could be the freedom that you have with your life and work balance, it could be the impact that you're making, or sometimes it could even be your exit strategy. So the main thing to think about is if you can't describe what your vision is, you can't build towards it.
Exactly. I always say that your vision is your North Star. It is where you are headed. It will help you from straying off the path and it'll just keep you going to the destination. And then the goals that you create are the mile markers towards that destination. So that's why we talk a lot about before we create the goals, we have to create the vision. And the vision can change too. So that isn't something that necessarily is, you're not married to it forever, but it is something that you do need to be clear about, at least for the near future. And when it does change, typically it's small changes, but that destination, that North Star does pretty much stay in the same place.
Yeah, it does. And I think that one thing that we do, maybe strategic mapping a little differently, is we think of our vision in layers. So where do we want to be? If we're talking specifically about Elevate, where do we want to be in 5 years? What is our 1 year focus? And then we also meet quarterly to review where our plan is and where we are headed, how our milestones or our mile markers are going. And then we even do monthly reviews where we're looking at metrics. We are looking again at the tasks that we're doing for that quarter to make sure that we are making progress and not going and not plateauing, because without that layering, everything's going to feel urgent. Everything is going to feel like it needs to be done right now. Everything's important and urgent, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's for us having that clear vision on that really high level, like you said, the 5 year vision. And then, okay, if that's the case, in order to get there, what do we need to do this year? And that becomes our year focus. And then from there, every quarter, every month, we're looking at how are we doing as far as heading in the direction towards that destination, towards that vision, towards that 1 year focus. So really just always measuring and making sure that are we on the right track? Are we moving in the right direction? I think is really important. Something else that I think people tend to think about when they think vision, and I think it's also because we all, I mean, in so many places that I have gone through this exercise, that one of the biggest things that people ask you to put in there is revenue. And yes, that's important, but it isn't the only piece. So I like to tell people that it should be personal to you, the founder. You're the visionary, you're the person who started this in the first place, really making sure that the vision is personal to you. So what does your role look like in 5 to 10 years? What does it look like for you? What does your work-life balance look like? What decisions are you no longer making? We all know that in the beginning of the business, you're doing all the things, you're making all the decisions. But in an ideal world, where maybe are you not as involved or driving things forward? Where would light you up if you could only focus on these areas of the business? So that should all be part of your vision too. And also painting a picture of what your impact looks like. We all have the why in our business, who we're wanting to impact, who we're wanting to serve, what problem we're trying to solve. And so make sure that that's incorporated, saying things like, what are your clients saying about you? How many customers have you served? How broad of a customer base have you served? Have you gone global yet? Like that type of thing. What does your team look like? That's important too. Is there a certain structure that you're envisioning in order to help you accomplish all that you need to accomplish? So there's so many layers of a vision, so many pieces of it that you should consider. Again, it's meant to be something that is helping you drive forward and inspiring you and keeping you in this right direction. So there's a lot of things to consider when creating it.
Yeah, and the vision itself, as you're looking forward into the future, if your vision, your 1 year focus at the end of that 1 year, if your vision is still requiring you to do everything and you have to do everything to hold you're the glue, you're not scaling. you're just expanding your exhaustion. And that is not what your vision should be. Your vision should be where you can look at it, like you said, and say, I want to look like this in 1 year. I want my business to look like this in 1 year. I want my impact to be this in 1 year. But if you are still the glue that is holding everything together, your vision will never propel into something bigger than what you want it to be, because you're constantly going to be exhausted from holding everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that something that I really emphasize in strategic mapping process is capacity. So really looking at, okay, if this is the vision, if these are the goals, how are we going to get you there? Because you truly can't do it all yourself. And even if you had the ability to, which we all mostly do have the ability to accomplish these things, but the growth would not be able to be attained in that amount of time. And the goals would not be able to be attained by yourself without completely depleting you. And so that wouldn't be the goal. We want to make sure you still love your business. We want to make sure that by the time you achieve that vision, that you are still thriving and truly enjoying what you do and all of that. And so a lot of that has to do with capacity. So when we look at growth, we want to look at the systems you're using, the team that you're bringing alongside you, what cash flow looks like, and the leadership team bandwidth. So when I say leadership team, those are typically the team members that either you currently have or that maybe can be leveled up into co-decision makers. So that's like how you started, Nicole, is I saw leadership capability in you, and we developed an amazing amount of trust, and you were aligned with what we were doing. You had the skill. There was just a perfect fit for me to say basically help, right? I trust you to come alongside me and do these things. And you have sat in many different leadership roles, and we have been able to see where you thrive, change where maybe it isn't the right fit, and that's okay. But making sure that you have this leadership team that can take the decision based things off of you, and even some strategy at this point. There's a lot of times where, Nicole, you run with things now, and you'll run it by me to say, hey, just so you know, this is what I'm doing. I would say 99% of the time I'm like, sounds great. It's very much aligned with where we're going. And so those are the kinds of capacity decisions that have to be made alongside strategy in order for you to keep going towards your vision without burning yourself out as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're celebrating our 5th year as Elevate this month. It's March 2026, and we are celebrating 5 years. Could you imagine sitting in your seat now today and having to hold everything that I now own, or that Amanda owns, or that our account manager team owns? Like, honestly, what would your life look like if you were still owning all of that on your plate? It wouldn't be sustainable. Like, your work-life balance would be all over the place.
I truly don't think Elevate would exist, to be honest, because I think that in the beginning, it all was very doable with smaller amounts of demands in each area, right? Just because we were smaller. But as we've grown to where we are now, and also figuring out where my strengths are versus where the rest of yours are on the team, I think that has helped us all be able to focus on things and make an impact in different areas where we're actually excited about it. And because there's no way that anyone, even the founder, is super excited about every area of the business. And like you said, also the time, there's no way. So there's things that in the business I am very glad that I don't have to do anymore because I just don't enjoy it, or I don't thrive, or I'm not as efficient, or whatever that might be. But other people are, and we figured that out. Truthfully, even if I was really good at and really loved all of the areas of the business, time-wise, I don't have that amount of time in a day. Truthfully, I don't even have enough time in the day for what I do now. So I think that if I had to do everything that our entire leadership team does to date, I don't think Elevate would exist anymore.
But this is like a real life conversation. Like, this is real. And this is exactly why strategic mapping is needed for businesses, because it's not just the founder's capacity, it's also the team's capacity. So I'm able to take things on and own things in my role. Amanda's able to take things on and own things in her role that need to be done because we have the capacity. We have figured out who owns what. We were talking about this in the last episode, is making sure you have somebody who's leading whatever the initiative is. And that's what we have done, because if you as a business owner or your team is not ready, if your systems are not ready, if your leadership team as a whole is not ready, you aren't strengthening your growth, you're straining it. because you're not going to be able, you can only pull something so tight before it breaks, right? The rope can only be pulled so tight. So you have to make sure that the capacity is there across the board so that you can grow and not strain the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a simple exercise that I encourage people to think through when they're thinking of their vision of that North Star, that destination of where they're headed is if you were to picture yourself, I would say start 3 years from now, if especially if you're a startup in the startup phase. If you're in the growth phase, you could probably go 5 to 10 years. But ask yourself, what services are we known for? In a perfect world, if everything is going according to plan in 3, 5, 10 years, what services are we known for? What does my team look like? What's the revenue range that we're operating in? And truthfully, I always encourage people to, especially, well, really any business, to also look at not just revenue, but probably your bottom line, because we all know that as small business owners, that's the true tell. And also, what does your role look like day to day? What are you doing with your days, your weeks, your months? What does that look like? Because knowing that in that vision, it should light you up, it should feel really exciting to you, and that's how you're on the right track. And something that I also, just as we've been talking about what is comprised of in a vision is, and I get this question a lot, is, well, I don't want to include all of that, because a lot of it seems very personal, and you don't want to necessarily put out there to everyone, to your team, to your clients, what your day to day looks like. Nobody's inspired by that, right? And it might be a little bit more personal to you. So I think that I always tell people that have a quick, short, public facing one of, we're on a mission to, spread this product globally to impact XYZ for this reason. But then you also should have a personal one. And this could be personal to you. No one else sees it, but maybe maybe is inspiring that you would want to share it with your team, or maybe just your leadership team, whatever that looks like. But you should have a more personal one that covers everything that we've talked about so far. And you could just have a quick public facing one that, like I said, just inspires others to know what you're on a mission to do without the personal details.
Yeah, I love that. I think the personal mission and vision is super important in a business. Like you were saying, you don't have to share it with anybody. It could just be your own personal thing that sits on your desk that reminds you why you, as the business owner, have this business, what your goals are as a human that works for this business, but you as a person, what your goals are. And I think that sometimes you need to ask yourself something that's a little bit harder to define. And most people, including myself, have a harder time answering this question, but it's, what do I have to stop doing to make sure that the future is possible? Because you have to stop doing some things in order to make other things move forward. And so that's a very hard question to ask yourself, to ask your team. What do you have to stop? Because if you are not taking anything away, you can't multiply anything, because you're going to run out at some point. The gas tank is going to run dry because you just can't do it all on your plate at the same time to make the vision move forward.
Yeah, I absolutely love that question. I think that's like you said, it's a very hard question to answer. I think anyone, business owner or other, honestly, could ask themselves that, we all have a dream life. We all have dreams, whether it's business or personal, and we all definitely are doing things that aren't helping us get there. And so I think asking that question probably continually, to be honest, let's not save it just for the strategy annual type conversation, but I think continually we should ask ourselves, what am I doing with my time, with my brain space, that is actually not helping me get to where I want to go, and then doing something about it. So I really love that question. I think that I think there's two pieces that are really important with what we're talking about. So we have the vision, but without execution, it's just noise. It's just kind of something sitting there as I don't know, I'm almost thinking like a golden ticket, pipe dream. And then, but if you have execution without the vision, then that'll lead to burnout. You're just going to kind of spin your wheels in no particular direction. So I think that there's two pieces here that we're talking that are absolutely critical to each other.
Yeah. And when you combine the two of them, then you have a strategy. If you're doing one
Mhm.
without the other, it's not a strategy. You have to combine them and you have to allow them to work harmoniously next to each other in order to be strategic. And I think that that is the biggest takeaway when it comes to defining your vision, is making sure that you're able to execute it as well.
Right. Absolutely. There's two pieces of the pie, yin and yang together.
Yes.
Well, everyone, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Strategy Sessions, Mapping the Business You Actually Want. If this conversation sparked something for you, we created a strategic mapping starter guide to help you take the first step. It's not a full business plan template, but it is a clarity tool, a way to pause, zoom out, and think strategically before you make your next move. You can download it using the link in the show notes. And if you're ready to go deeper, to build a fully aligned strategic map with real structure, ownership, and execution, I'd love for you to book a clarity call. And remember, you've got this.